The morning mist hung heavy over the French countryside near Mortain as Sergeant Jack Morrison peered through his periscope. His upgraded Sherman tank, equipped with the new 76mm gun, sat motionless behind a hedgerow. 300 yards ahead, a massive German Panther tank prowled the valley floor, its crew completely unaware they were being hunted. The German commander, Obergefreiter Klaus Richter, had grown confident after months of easily deflecting rounds from the standard 75mm Shermans. But Morrison's tank carried something different, something the Germans had never encountered before. What happened in the next 60 seconds would shatter German assumptions about American firepower forever.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. September 12, 1944. The Norman hedgerows stretched endlessly across the rolling hills near Mortain, France. Each field was a fortress, every stone wall a potential death trap. For weeks, American armored divisions had been grinding through this ancient patchwork of farmland, paying in blood for every mile gained against the retreating Wehrmacht. Staff Sergeant Jack Morrison from Toledo, Ohio, had seen enough combat to know when something felt different. His M4A1 Sherman tank, nicknamed Ohio Thunder, was one of the first in his unit to receive the experimental 76mm M1 gun. The weapon had arrived with strict orders from divisional command, absolute secrecy. German intelligence could not learn about this upgrade. Morrison's crew consisted of 4 battle-hardened veterans. Corporal Danny Kowalski from Detroit handled the gun with surgeon-like precision. Private First Class Robert Hayes from Nashville kept their engine purring despite the punishment of constant combat. Sergeant Tommy Chen from San Francisco had an uncanny ability to spot enemy positions through his driver's vision blocks. Together, they had survived Normandy, St. Vith, and countless skirmishes across France. The standard 75mm gun on most Sherman tanks had proven adequate against German Panzer IVs and lighter armor, but the newer German tanks presented serious problems. The Panzer and Tiger tanks, with their thick frontal armor and powerful guns, had been terrorizing American tank crews for months. Many Shermans had been reduced to burning hulks after futile attempts to penetrate German armor at combat ranges. Morrison remembered the briefing 3 days earlier. Colonel William Patterson from Fort Knox had explained the 76mm gun's capabilities in hushed tones. The new weapon fired a 17-pound armor-piercing round at nearly 3,000 feet per second. More importantly, it could penetrate 4.5 inches of vertical armor at 500 yards, enough to punch through a Panther's frontal plate under the right conditions. "The Germans don't know we have this," Patterson had emphasized. "They've been fighting 75mm Shermans for months. Their crews have developed tactics based on that assumption. Use their overconfidence against them." The morning of September 12th brought unseasonably cool weather to Normandy. Morrison's tank occupied a concealed position behind a centuries-old stone wall, part of the intricate bocage system that dominated this region. Intelligence reports indicated a German armored patrol would traverse the valley below sometime before noon. Morrison's orders were simple: engage and destroy, using the element of surprise. Kowalski checked his ammunition for the dozenth time. The 76mm shells were noticeably different from the familiar 75 rounds. Longer, heavier, with a more pointed nose designed for armor penetration. The gunner had practiced loading drills until he could chamber a round blindfolded. Speed would be crucial in the coming engagement. Hayes monitored his engine temperatures while performing routine maintenance checks. The Ford GAA V8 engine had been running flawlessly, but combat could stress mechanical systems beyond their design limits. A breakdown during battle meant certain death. He had witnessed too many crews burned alive in disabled tanks. Chen studied his maps, plotting potential escape routes and identifying landmarks. The bocage terrain offered concealment, but limited mobility. Stone walls that provided protection could also become death traps if retreat became necessary. His job was ensuring they could fight and, if needed, withdraw to fight another day. Through his periscope, Morrison observed the peaceful valley below. French farmers had abandoned their fields months ago, leaving behind evidence of normal life interrupted by war. A wooden cart sat half-loaded with hay near the valley's center. Scattered farm tools rusted in the morning dew. Nature was already beginning to reclaim human spaces, with weeds growing through fence posts and wildflowers blooming in abandoned gardens. At 10:47 hours, Chen spotted movement along the far ridgeline. A German reconnaissance vehicle appeared first, a light armored car probing for threats. Behind it, barely visible through the morning haze, Morrison detected the unmistakable silhouette of a Panther V Panther tank. The Panther moved with mechanical precision down the valley slope. Its commander, Obergefreiter Klaus Richter from Bavaria, had been fighting American forces since the Normandy invasion. His crew had destroyed 11 Sherman tanks over the past 2 months, primarily by exploiting the 75mm gun's inability to penetrate German armor at combat distances. Richter's confidence had grown with each victory. American Sherman crews were brave but predictable. They would advance aggressively, fire multiple rounds that harmlessly bounce off Panther armor, then retreat or die trying. The pattern had repeated so many times that Richter's crew had developed almost casual attitudes towards Sherman encounters. Gunner Unterscharführer Hans Weber from Hamburg had become particularly skilled at targeting Sherman weak points. The American tank's thinner side armor was vulnerable to the Panther's powerful 75mm KWK-42 gun. Weber could penetrate Sherman armor at ranges exceeding 800 meters. Driver Obergefreiter Friedrich Lunger from Berlin handled the massive Panther with surprising grace despite its 45-ton weight. The tank's Maybach HL230P30 engine provided adequate power, though fuel consumption remained problematic. German supply lines were increasingly unreliable as Allied forces pushed deeper into occupied territory. Radio operator Gefreiter Ernst Hoffmann monitored communications while managing the Panther's sophisticated fire control systems. German tanks possessed superior optics and range-finding equipment compared to American vehicles. This technological advantage had proven decisive in numerous engagements.
Morrison watched the Panther approach his kill zone. The German tank moved confidently, its commander apparently unconcerned about potential threats. Standard German tactics called for mutual support between armor and infantry, but this patrol seemed unusually isolated. Perhaps fuel shortages had forced tactical compromises. The range was close to 400 meters. Morrison could clearly see details of the Panther's construction through his improved optics. The tank's sloped frontal armor was designed to deflect incoming rounds, a principle German engineers had perfected after studying Soviet tank designs. However, the 76mm gun's increased velocity and penetration characteristics might overcome even this advanced protection. Kowalski aligned his sights on the Panther's frontal hull, specifically targeting the area below the gun mantlet where armor thickness was reduced. German tank crews typically felt safest when facing enemies directly, confident in their frontal armor's protective capabilities. This psychological factor might prove as important as the technical surprise Morrison's crew was about to deliver. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the mist that had provided concealment. Soon, the German crew would have clear visibility across the entire valley. The window for surprise attack was rapidly closing. Morrison made his decision. Target acquired. Panther tank 400 meters dead ahead.
Kowalski's voice came back steady and professional. On target. Fire. The 76mm gun erupted with a deafening roar that shattered the morning stillness. Inside Ohio Thunder, the concussion slammed against Morrison's eardrums despite his leather helmet. Acrid smoke filled the fighting compartment as the 17-pound armor-piercing round screamed across the valley at 2,900 feet per second. Richter's world exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The American round punched through his Panther's frontal armor like a hot knife through butter, something that should have been impossible. The penetration sent white-hot metal fragments ricocheting through the crew compartment. Weber screamed as molten steel seared across his left shoulder. Hoffman's radio equipment disintegrated in a cascade of sparks and smoke. "Unmöglich!" Richter shouted over the chaos. The impossible had just happened. No American tank gun could achieve what he had just witnessed. His crew's confidence evaporated instantly, replaced by raw terror. Langer threw the Panther into reverse, desperate to escape whatever nightmare weapon had just nearly killed them. The massive tank lurched backward, tracks churning up clouds of dirt and debris. Black smoke poured from damaged internal systems. Warning lights flashed across Langer's instrument panel like angry red eyes. "Unmöglich!" Richter shouted over the chaos. The impossible had just happened. No American tank gun could achieve what he had just witnessed. His crew's confidence evaporated instantly, replaced by raw terror. Langer threw the Panther into reverse, desperate to escape whatever nightmare weapon had just nearly killed them. The massive tank lurched backward, tracks churning up clouds of dirt and debris. Black smoke poured from damaged internal systems. Warning lights flashed across Langer's instrument panel like angry red eyes. Morrison watched his rounds impact through the periscope with grim satisfaction. The German tank was wounded but still operational. Kowalski was already loading another 76mm round, his movements practiced and efficient despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Hit confirmed. Target backing up fast," Morrison called to his crew. Hayes gunned the forward engine, bringing Ohio Thunder around the stone wall's edge for a better firing position. The Sherman's tracks bit into soft earth as they maneuvered for a second shot. Time was critical. Wounded animals were often the most dangerous. Chen spotted muzzle flashes from the far ridge. German infantry was advancing to support their damaged armor. MG-42 machine gun rounds began snapping overhead, their distinctive sound, like ripping cloth, amplified 1,000-fold. Inside the retreating Panther, Weber fought to stay conscious. Blood ran down his face from a gash across his forehead. His left arm hung useless, but his right hand still gripped the gun controls. If he could get one shot at the American tank, the Panther's superior firepower would end this nightmare. Richter's mind raced through tactical options. Retreat meant abandoning this sector to American forces. Standing and fighting against an unknown weapon seemed suicidal. But German doctrine emphasized aggressive action even under adverse conditions. His crew had survived dozens of engagements through bold decision-making. "Halt," Richter commanded. "Prepare to engage." Langer stomped on the brake pedals, bringing 45 tons of German steel to a grinding stop. The Panther's turret began rotating toward the American position. Despite internal damage, the tank's main systems remained functional. Weber aligned his sights through blood-clouded vision.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Morrison saw the German turret traversing in his direction. The race was on. Whoever fired first would likely determine the engagement's outcome. American tank crews trained extensively on rapid target acquisition, but German optical equipment was superior. Professional competence would decide this duel. "Traverse right, quick!" Morrison barked. Kowalski spun his turret controls, bringing the 76mm gun to bear. The upgraded Sherman's turret rotation was slightly faster than the Panthers, a small but potentially decisive advantage. Through his gunner's scope, Kowalski could see the German gun tubes swinging toward them like the finger of death. 300 meters away, Weber struggled with his controls. Shrapnel damage had affected his hydraulic systems. The turret moved sluggishly, fighting against mechanical resistance. Precious seconds ticked away as both gunners sought target solutions. Hayes kept Ohio Thunder moving, zigzagging unpredictably to spoil German aim. The Sherman's superior mobility became apparent as it danced between hedgerows while maintaining offensive capability. German tanks prioritized protection and firepower over maneuverability, a design philosophy that sometimes proved limiting in fluid combat situations. Machine gun fire intensified from German infantry positions. Bullets sparked off the Sherman's armor plating, creating a metallic percussion that added urgency to the tank duel. Chen returned fire with his bow-mounted 30-caliber machine gun, forcing German soldiers to seek cover. Weber finally achieved target lock. The American Sherman filled his gun sight, seemingly unaware of its impending destruction. His finger moved toward the trigger. Victory was milliseconds away. Kowalski fired first. The second 76mm round struck the Panther's turret face with devastating effect. German armor steel, designed to withstand conventional threats, crumpled under the new American weapon's kinetic energy. The round penetrated completely, detonating the Panther's ammunition storage in a tremendous secondary explosion. Richter's last thought was wonder at American innovation. Then white-hot flame consumed everything. The Panther tank disappeared in a pillar of fire and smoke that rose 200 feet into the Norman sky. Debris rained down across the valley, chunks of armor plating, pieces of track, fragments of equipment. The explosion's shockwave rattled windows in abandoned farmhouses a mile away. Morrison's crew sat in stunned silence for several seconds. They had just witnessed the complete destruction of Germany's most formidable tank by a weapon the enemy never knew existed. The psychological impact was as significant as the tactical victory. German infantry began withdrawing from their positions, their confidence shattered along with their armored support. Soldiers who had learned to fear American air power and artillery now faced a new threat, tank guns that could defeat their best armor. Word would spread quickly through German units about this mysterious new weapon. Hayes drove Ohio Thunder toward the burning Panther hulk. Standard procedure required confirming enemy destruction and searching for intelligence materials. As they approached, the heat from the burning tank became almost unbearable. Nothing could have survived that inferno. Kowalski ejected the spent shell casing, its brass still warm from firing. 2 rounds had eliminated what many considered an invincible opponent. The 76mm gun had proved itself in the most decisive way possible, through combat victory against overwhelming odds. Chen photographed the destroyed Panther with a small camera issued for intelligence purposes. These images would help analysts understand the new gun's effectiveness against German armor. More importantly, they would boost American morale when crews learned their upgraded Shermans could match German firepower. Morrison radioed their success to battalion headquarters. Colonel Patterson would be pleased to learn his new weapon had performed exactly as promised. More 76mm Shermans were already being shipped from American factories, but their effectiveness would remain secret until German forces encountered them in battle. As Ohio Thunder rolled past the burning German tank, Morrison reflected on the morning's engagement. Superior technology had trumped experience and confidence. The German crew had died believing American tanks couldn't threaten their advanced armor. Their final lesson came too late to matter. The war was far from over, but today marked a turning point in the armored battle for Europe. German tank crews will no longer approach American Shermans with casual confidence. Fear was about to shift sides in the deadly game of armored warfare. 3 hours after the engagement, word of the Panthers' destruction had already reached German divisional headquarters near Falaise. Oberst Heinrich Miller from Cologne stared at the field telephone in disbelief as his subordinate repeated the impossible report. A single American Sherman had penetrated Panther frontal armor at 400 meters, something their intelligence assured him was categorically impossible. Müller had commanded armored forces since the Polish campaign in 1939. He understood tank capabilities better than most officers in the Wehrmacht. American 75mm guns simply lacked the velocity and penetrating power to threaten Panther tanks frontally. Yet 3 separate witnesses confirmed the impossible had occurred. The implications were staggering. If Americans had developed improved anti-tank weapons without German intelligence detecting them, every tactical assumption about armored warfare might be obsolete. Müller's entire sector's defense relied on Panther and Tiger tanks holding key positions while lighter forces maneuvered. Superior German armor technology was supposed to compensate for their numerical disadvantage. Major Wilhelm Brandt from Munich, Müller's intelligence officer, spread reconnaissance photographs across the command table. The images showed the destroyed Panther in stark detail, a completely burned-out hull with its turret blown clear off the chassis. Whatever had caused this destruction possessed tremendous destructive power. "The penetration hole is perfectly circular," Brandt observed, pointing to enlarged photographs. "No spalling around the edges. This suggests extremely high-velocity impact, probably from a gun we haven't encountered before."
Müller studied the evidence with growing concern. German metallurgists had designed Panther armor specifically to defeat known American weapons. If the Americans had secretly developed superior guns, German tank crews were driving into battle with false confidence in their protection. Meanwhile, 40 kilometers to the northeast, Morrison's crew was discovering their victory had consequences beyond their immediate tactical situation. Battalion headquarters had ordered Ohio Thunder to remain in position while technical intelligence teams examined the destroyed Panther. What they were learning would reshape American armored doctrine. Captain Edward Sullivan from Boston arrived with a team of ordnance specialists to study the 76mm gun's effectiveness. Sullivan had graduated from MIT with a degree in mechanical engineering before the war. His job was translating battlefield results into recommendations for future tank production and crew training. The Panther's armor showed textbook signs of kinetic energy penetration. The 76mm round had punched through 8 centimeters of face-hardened steel without deforming significantly. Metallurgical analysis would later reveal the American tungsten core projectile had maintained structural integrity throughout penetration, maximizing energy transfer into the target. Kowalski described the engagement in precise technical terms. First shot hit low on the glacis plate, about 15 degrees off perpendicular, penetrated clean through. Second shot was dead center on the turret face. That one caused the ammunition explosion. Sullivan made detailed notes about ammunition performance and target effects. This information would be transmitted to Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, where engineers would incorporate battlefield data into improved ammunition designs. Combat was the ultimate test of theoretical calculations. Hayes had monitored engine performance throughout the engagement. The Ford GAA power plant had operated flawlessly despite rapid maneuvering and the stress of combat. More importantly, the Sherman's mechanical reliability allowed sustained operations that German tanks often couldn't match due to fuel shortages and maintenance problems. Chen had observed German infantry reactions during the battle. Enemy soldiers had withdrawn immediately after witnessing their tank's destruction, abandoning prepared positions they might have held for hours against conventional attacks. Psychological warfare was proving as important as technical superiority. Back at German headquarters, Müller was implementing emergency countermeasures. All Panzer units received immediate orders to avoid frontal engagements with unidentified American tanks. German crews were instructed to engage only from flanking positions where their superior guns could exploit Sherman's side armor vulnerability. The problem was identifying which American tanks carried the mysterious new weapon. External differences between 75mm and 76mm Shermans were subtle, mainly a slightly longer gun tube and modified muzzle brake. German tank commanders would need to get dangerously close to distinguish between variants, negating their range advantage. General Major Kurt Ziegler from Dresden, commanding the sector's armored reserves, reviewed his tactical options with growing pessimism. American forces were already achieving numerical superiority through industrial production. If they also possessed technological equality or advantage, German defensive operations would become increasingly difficult. Ziegler's staff estimated American factories were producing Sherman tanks at a rate exceeding 4,000 units monthly. German production peaked at fewer than 2,000 tanks per month, including all types. Quantity had always been America's strength, but quality was supposed to remain Germany's domain. News of the engagement spread through American armored units via unofficial channels faster than official reports. Tank crews desperately wanted to know if their vehicles could finally match German armor in direct combat. Morale had suffered significantly during months of losing battles against superior German tanks. Staff Sergeant Michael Compson from Chicago commanded another 76mm Sherman in Morrison's battalion. His crew had been skeptical about their new gun's effectiveness, having witnessed too many American rounds bounce harmlessly off German armor. Morrison's victory provided concrete proof their upgraded weapon could deliver decisive results. Corporal Vincent Rossi from Philadelphia served as Thompson's gunner. He had practiced extensively with the 76mm gun, but never fired at German armor. The technical specifications were impressive, but combat performance was the only measurement that mattered. Now he knew his weapon could penetrate Germany's best tank. Private First Class David Murphy from Seattle handled ammunition in Thompson's tank. The 76mm rounds were heavier and more complex than the familiar 75 shells, requiring modified loading procedures. Murphy had memorized every step of the loading sequence until he could perform it automatically under stress. Sergeant Anthony Martinez from Los Angeles drove Thompson's Sherman with the same skill Hayes demonstrated in Ohio Thunder. The upgraded tanks maintained the same mobility characteristics as earlier variants while providing dramatically improved firepower. American engineering had achieved the optimal balance of competing requirements. German intelligence services were desperately seeking information about American gun improvements. Agents in Allied territories had detected increased production of tungsten core ammunition at several facilities, but specific details about new tank weapons remained elusive. Industrial security around armaments production had tightened considerably since America entered the war. Oberst Müller received updated orders from Army Group Headquarters directing him to capture an intact American tank with the improved gun. German engineers needed to examine the weapon's construction and ammunition to develop effective countermeasures. This requirement would force dangerous close-range operations against increasingly capable American armor. The balance of armored warfare was shifting subtly but decisively. German crews who had grown accustomed to technical superiority now faced opponents with equivalent firepower and superior numbers. Tactical doctrines developed during years of successful operations would require fundamental revision. Morrison's crew remained unaware of the strategic implications their morning's work had generated. They were simply 4 American soldiers who had survived another day of combat in a foreign land. Their technical advantage was gratifying, but the war would continue regardless of any single engagement's outcome. As evening approached over the Norman countryside, both sides prepared for the next day's battles with a new understanding of their capabilities and limitations. The age of German armored invincibility was ending, replaced by a more balanced and deadly form of mechanized warfare that would characterize the conflict's final months. September 15, 1944. 48 hours had passed since Morrison's crew destroyed the Panther near Mortain. German High Command had disseminated urgent tactical bulletins throughout Army Group B, warning all armored units about suspected American gun improvements. The hunt for a 76mm Sherman had become a top priority operation. Hauptmann Franz Weber from Hamburg commanded a company of Panzer IV tanks positioned near the village of Domfront. Weber had received explicit orders to locate and capture an American tank equipped with the mysterious new weapon. German engineers desperately needed technical intelligence to develop countermeasures against what appeared to be a significant threat to armored operations.
Weber's hunting party consisted of 3 Panzer IV Ausf H supported by a platoon of Panzerschreck-equipped infantry. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Locate American armor, identify tanks with longer gun barrels, then coordinate a flanking attack to disable rather than destroy the target vehicle. The German captain had studied reconnaissance photographs from the Mortain engagement until he could identify 76mm Shermans by subtle external differences. The extended gun tube was the primary distinguishing feature, along with a modified counterweight behind the turret and different muzzle brake configuration. Unteroffizier Klaus Richter, no relation to the deceased Panther commander, served as Weber's gunner. The young soldier from Düsseldorf had joined the Wehrmacht only 6 months earlier, but possessed exceptional marksmanship skills. His assignment was precisely targeting Sherman tracks or drive sprockets to immobilize vehicles without causing fatal crew casualties. 20 kilometers southeast, Morrison's platoon had received new operational orders. Intelligence reports indicated increased German armored activity in their sector. American forces were advancing toward the strategic crossroads at Wehr, but German resistance had stiffened significantly since the Panther engagement. Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison from Denver commanded the armored task force spearheading this advance. Harrison had replaced the wounded Colonel Patterson after a German artillery strike destroyed battalion headquarters 2 days earlier. The new commander was eager to prove himself through aggressive action against enemy forces. Morrison's Ohio Thunder led a column of 5 Sherman tanks through the narrow country roads connecting Norman villages. Behind him, Thompson's crew in Detroit Steel provided overwatch while 3 additional 75mm Shermans completed the formation. The mixed composition concealed which vehicles carried the improved guns. Corporal Jennifer Walsh from Portland had recently joined Morrison's crew as their new radio operator, replacing a wounded soldier evacuated to England. Walsh possessed exceptional communication skills and had volunteered for frontline duty despite opportunities for safer rear echelon assignments. Her calm voice coordinated between tank crews during complex maneuvers. The terrain around Domfront favored defensive operations. Ancient stone walls divided fields into natural fire zones, while thick hedgerows provided concealment for both sides.
German forces had prepared this ground carefully, positioning anti-tank weapons at critical choke points along likely American approach routes. Weber's Panzer IV occupied a hull-down position behind a medieval church wall, its 75mm KWK-40 gun covering the main road from Mortain. The German captain could observe American movements through high-quality Zeiss optics while remaining virtually invisible to enemy reconnaissance. At 0830 hours, Morrison's column entered Weber's kill zone. The German commander identified Ohio Thunder immediately. The extended gun barrel and modified turret configuration matched intelligence photographs exactly. Weber had found his prize. Target identified, Weber whispered into his throat microphone. American Sherman with long gun barrel, first vehicle in column. His supporting tanks acknowledged the transmission. Obergefreiter Hans Müller from Leipzig commanded the 2nd Panzer IV, positioned to attack the American column's flanks. Feldwebel Ernst Hoffmann from Berlin controlled the 3rd tank, responsible for blocking potential escape routes. Morrison sensed danger before seeing actual threats. Combat experience had taught him to recognize when tactical situations felt wrong. The road ahead seemed too quiet, too perfect for ambush operations. His instincts screamed warnings about invisible enemies waiting in concealment. "Halt!" Morrison ordered. "Something's not right here." Kowalski traversed his turret slowly, searching for targets through the 76mm gun's improved optics. The bocage terrain offered countless hiding places for enemy armor. German tanks were masters of defensive ambush tactics, using terrain advantages to overcome American numerical superiority. Hayes kept their engine running but shifted into neutral, ready for emergency maneuvers. The Ford GAA power plant idled smoothly, its mechanical reliability contrasting sharply with German tanks that often suffered fuel or maintenance problems during extended operations. Chen studied his maps while monitoring radio communications from other American units. Several tank crews had reported contact with German armor in this general area over the past 24 hours. Enemy forces were definitely concentrating around Domfront for reasons that remained unclear. Weber made his final preparations for what German doctrine called a precision engagement. His objective was disabling the American tank without destroying it completely. Richter aligned his gun sight on Ohio Thunder's right track assembly, specifically targeting the drive sprocket mechanism that powered the Sherman's movement. The range was ideal. 350 meters provided excellent accuracy while maintaining sufficient distance for tactical flexibility. Weber's Panzer IV possessed superior armor protection compared to the Sherman, but the American tank's unknown gun capabilities introduced dangerous variables into the equation. Morrison's survival instincts suddenly crystallized into recognition. The church tower ahead provided perfect observation for artillery spotters. Stone walls offered concealment for anti-tank guns. This entire area was a carefully prepared killing ground designed to trap American armor. "Ambush! Reverse immediately!" Morrison shouted. Hayes slammed the Sherman into reverse gear, but German planning had anticipated this reaction. Müller's Panzer IV emerged from concealment behind the column, blocking their retreat route. The Americans were trapped in a carefully orchestrated tactical box. Weber fired first, his 75mm round striking Ohio Thunder's right track with surgical precision. The track separated, metal links scattering across cobblestones as the Sherman lurched to a halt. Morrison's crew was immobilized but alive, exactly according to the German plan. Thompson's Detroit Steel immediately engaged Müller's blocking tank. The 76mm gun roared, its armor-piercing round punching completely through the Panzer IV side armor. Müller's tank erupted in flames as ammunition exploded, eliminating one corner of the German trap.
Hoffmann moved his Panzer IV to support Weber, but American numerical superiority was beginning to tell. Three 75mm Shermans in the column's rear were maneuvering for flanking shots, while Morrison's immobilized tank provided direct fire support despite its mobility loss. Walsh coordinated defensive fire missions while calling for artillery support. Her calm radio procedures ensured accurate communication despite the chaos of tank combat. American forward observers were already plotting German positions for immediate bombardment. Weber realized his carefully planned ambush was dissolving into a conventional tank battle, exactly the type of engagement German forces needed to avoid giving American material advantages. His orders required capturing the mysterious Sherman, but survival was becoming the primary concern. The battle for Morrison's tank had begun, but German hunters were discovering that their intended prey possessed claws sharper than anyone had expected. The immobilized Ohio Thunder sat like a wounded predator, its broken track sprawled across the Norman cobblestones while German and American forces maneuvered for decisive advantage. Morrison's crew faced their most desperate situation since landing at Omaha Beach 3 months earlier. Their revolutionary 76mm gun remained fully operational, but without mobility, they were vulnerable to flanking attacks that could exploit the Sherman's thinner side armor. Weber's remaining Panzer IV maintained its hull-down position behind the church wall, its commander weighing tactical options with methodical German precision. The capture mission had deteriorated into a conventional firefight, but Weber still possessed numerical advantage in this immediate area. His supporting infantry carried Panzerschreck anti-tank rockets capable of penetrating Sherman armor at close range. Kowalski traversed Ohio Thunder's turret with deliberate care, seeking targets among the stone buildings that dominated Domfront's ancient architecture. The 76mm gun's superior optics revealed details invisible to standard American tank equipment. Through his gunner's scope, Kowalski detected muzzle flashes from German infantry positions concealed throughout the village. "Infantry movement, 11 o'clock, range 200 meters," Kowalski reported with professional calm despite their precarious situation. Morrison acknowledged the threat while monitoring radio communications from supporting American forces. Walsh's expert coordination had summoned artillery support, but German counter-battery fire was already targeting suspected American observer positions. The bocage terrain that provided concealment also complicated accurate fire direction. Hayes worked frantically to repair their damaged track system. The German round had severed the track cleanly without damaging the drive sprocket mechanism. With proper tools and 15 minutes of uninterrupted work, Hayes could restore their mobility. Unfortunately, German forces weren't providing that luxury of time. Chen had established communication with nearby American infantry units advancing through the village outskirts. A company of paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division was approaching from the northeast, but their estimated arrival time exceeded 30 minutes. Morrison's crew needed to survive that long while maintaining their defensive position. Thompson's Detroit Steel maneuvered between buildings using urban terrain to mask his approach toward Weber's concealed Panzer IV. The 76 Sherman possessed superior mobility compared to the heavier German tank, an advantage Thompson intended to exploit through rapid position changes that prevented effective German counterfire. Private First Class Samuel Rodriguez from San Antonio served as Thompson's loader, feeding 76mm rounds into the breech with mechanical precision. Rodriguez had grown up hunting in Texas Hill Country, developing steady nerves under pressure that served him well during tank combat. His smooth ammunition handling allowed Thompson's crew to maintain rapid rates of fire. Sergeant Robert Jackson from Memphis drove Detroit Steel with the aggressive style that characterized American armored tactics. Jackson understood that mobility was their greatest asset against German defensive positions. By constantly moving, American tanks could avoid the concentrated firepower that destroyed stationary targets. Corporal William Foster from Phoenix operated Detroit's radio equipment while managing the tank's machine guns. Foster had worked as a telephone operator before the war, skills that translated effectively to military communications. His ability to coordinate between multiple American units was proving crucial during this complex engagement. Weber's infantry support began their infiltration toward Ohio Thunder's position. Gefreiter Ludwig Schmidt from Vienna led a squad equipped with Panzerschreck anti-tank weapons, short-range but devastatingly effective rockets designed specifically for close-quarters armor combat. Schmidt's mission was approaching the immobilized Sherman from its blind spots. The German sergeant had fought in Russia before transferring to the Western Front. Eastern Front combat had taught him patience and tactical discipline that many younger soldiers lacked. Obergefreiter Johann Kruger from Frankfurt carried the squad's primary Panzerfaust launcher. The weapon could penetrate 8 inches of armor at optimal range, more than sufficient to destroy any Sherman variant. Kruger's challenge was approaching close enough to guarantee accurate placement while avoiding the American tank's defensive machine guns. Morrison detected the infantry movement through his commander's periscope, rotating the cupola to maintain visual contact with potential threats from multiple directions. American tank commanders received extensive training in combined arms warfare, emphasizing the need for constant vigilance against infantry anti-tank weapons. "Infantry approaching from the south," Morrison announced to his crew. "Hayes, how much longer on that track?" "5 minutes, maybe less," Hayes replied without looking up from his repair work. The track pins were stubborn, but Hayes had developed techniques for field repairs that exceeded standard manual procedures. Combat necessity had made him an expert in improvised maintenance. Kowalski engaged German infantry positions with high explosive rounds, each 76 mm shell creating devastating fragmentation among stone buildings. The new gun's improved ammunition included enhanced explosive fillers that proved highly effective against personnel. German soldiers sought deeper cover as American firepower intensified. Walsh coordinated fire missions with increasing urgency as German pressure mounted. American artillery batteries were range-finding on German positions, but counter-battery fire was forcing frequent displacement of gun positions. The bocage terrain that provided concealment also complicated accurate fire direction. Hayes worked frantically to repair their damaged track system. The German round had severed the track cleanly without damaging the drive sprocket mechanism. With proper tools and 15 minutes of uninterrupted work, Hayes could restore their mobility. Unfortunately, German forces weren't providing that luxury of time. Chen had established communication with nearby American infantry units advancing through the village outskirts. A company of paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division was approaching from the northeast, but their estimated arrival time exceeded 30 minutes. Morrison's crew needed to survive that long while maintaining their defensive position. Thompson's Detroit Steel maneuvered between buildings, using urban terrain to mask his approach toward Weber's concealed Panzer IV. The 76 Sherman possessed superior mobility compared to the heavier German tank, an advantage Thompson intended to exploit through rapid position changes that prevented effective German counterfire. Private First Class Samuel Rodriguez from San Antonio served as Thompson's loader, feeding 76 rounds into the breech with mechanical precision. Rodriguez had grown up hunting in Texas Hill Country, developing steady nerves under pressure that served him well during tank combat. His smooth ammunition handling allowed Thompson's crew to maintain rapid rates of fire. Sergeant Robert Jackson from Memphis drove Detroit Steel with the aggressive style that characterized American armored tactics. Jackson understood that mobility was their greatest asset against German defensive positions. By constantly moving, American tanks could avoid the concentrated firepower that destroyed stationary targets. Corporal William Foster from Phoenix operated Detroit's radio equipment while managing the tank's machine guns.
Foster had worked as a telephone operator before the war, skills that translated effectively to military communications. His ability to coordinate between multiple American units was proving crucial during this complex engagement. Weber's infantry support began their infiltration toward Ohio Thunder's position. Gefreiter Ludwig Schmidt from Vienna led a squad equipped with Panzerschreck anti-tank weapons, short-range but devastatingly effective rockets designed specifically for close-quarters armor combat. Schmidt's mission was approaching the immobilized Sherman from its blind spots. The German sergeant had fought in Russia before transferring to the Western Front. Eastern Front combat had taught him patience and tactical discipline that many younger soldiers lacked. Obergefreiter Johann Kruger from Frankfurt carried the squad's primary Panzerfaust launcher. The weapon could penetrate 8 inches of armor at optimal range, more than sufficient to destroy any Sherman variant. Kruger's challenge was approaching close enough to guarantee.
Weber made his tactical decision with characteristic German thoroughness. Rather than risk his remaining Panzer IV in direct combat against superior American guns, he would coordinate infantry assault while providing suppressive fire from his concealed position. German doctrine emphasized combined arms operations that maximized each weapon system's effectiveness. Schmidt's infiltration reached the critical phase as his squad approached within Panzerfaust range of Ohio Thunder. The immobilized Sherman presented a perfect target, but Morrison's crew maintained active defense with machine gun fire that forced German infantry to move carefully between buildings. Thompson's Detroit Steel emerged from concealment behind a bombed church, catching Weber's Panzer IV in profile at 200 meters range. The German tank's side armor was vulnerable to 76mm penetration at this distance. Thompson's gunner, Rossi, aligned his sights on the enemy tank's ammunition storage area. Target acquired. Panzer IV, side shot. Fire! The 76mm gun erupted with thunderous reports that echoed through Domfront's narrow streets. The armor-piercing round struck Weber's tank precisely where intended, penetrating the side armor and detonating stored ammunition in a catastrophic secondary explosion. The Panzer IV disappeared in a pillar of flame and debris that illuminated the entire village. Weber's death eliminated German coordination for the capture mission, but Schmidt's infantry assault continued according to their original plan. The German sergeant had positioned his men for simultaneous attacks from multiple directions, making American defensive fire less effective through target dispersion. Hayes completed his track repair just as German infantry emerged from concealment for their final assault. The track pins seated properly, restoring Ohio Thunder's mobility at the moment they needed it most. Morrison immediately ordered evasive maneuvers. "Move! Get us out of here!" Hayes gunned the Ford engine, spinning tracks on cobblestones as the Sherman lurched forward. German Panzerfaust rockets streaked past the moving tank, their distinctive exhaust trails marking near misses that would have been fatal hits against a stationary target. Schmidt's carefully planned assault dissolved as his primary target escaped the kill zone. The German sergeant ordered his men to seek cover as American machine gun fire swept through their positions. Without armored support, infantry attacks against alert tank crews rarely succeeded. Morrison's crew had survived their second major engagement in 3 days, but the tactical situation remained fluid. German forces controlled significant portions of Domfront, while American units were advancing through multiple approach routes. The battle for this strategic village was far from over. Kowalski engaged German infantry with high explosive rounds, while Hayes maneuvered through the village streets. The 76mm gun proved highly effective against personnel targets, its improved ammunition creating devastating fragmentation effects that forced German soldiers to abandon exposed positions.
Chen monitored communications from approaching American reinforcements. The 82nd Airborne paratroopers were engaging German positions on the village perimeter, while additional Sherman tanks were advancing along secondary roads. German defensive coordination was breaking down following the loss of their armored support. Walsh directed artillery fire against suspected German strongpoints. Her accurate spotting enabled devastating barrages that suppressed enemy resistance. American firepower superiority was becoming apparent as multiple weapon systems coordinated their effects against German defensive positions. Thompson's Detroit Steel continued hunting for German armor throughout the village, but Weber's destroyed Panzer IV appeared to be the only enemy tank in this immediate area. The German capture mission had failed completely, costing them valuable equipment and experienced personnel without achieving any intelligence objectives. Schmidt's surviving infantry withdrew toward prepared fallback positions outside Domfront. The German sergeant had lost half his squad during the failed assault, casualties that German forces could ill afford given their deteriorating manpower situation. American material advantages were making tactical victories increasingly costly for German units. Morrison's Ohio Thunder reached the village square, where French civilians emerged from hiding to witness their liberation. The elderly mayor approached the Sherman cautiously, offering wine and cheese to the American crew who had freed their community from German occupation. The tactical engagement at Domfront was ending, but strategic implications would resonate throughout the German defensive system. News of another 76mm Sherman victory would spread through Wehrmacht units, further undermining confidence in their armored superiority. The psychological warfare was proving as effective as the technical advancement. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.